The Adventure of the Second Stain. I had hoped that the affair of Abbey Grange would be the last adventure of Holmes that I would ever relate to the public. My reason for making that decision was not that I lacked material to write about, for there are still hundreds of cases of which I have not uttered a single word, nor has the public's fascination with that extraordinary man's singular personality and unique methods shown any sign of fading. The real reason was Holmes himself. He had grown increasingly unwilling to see his experiences continually published. During the years when he actively practiced his profession, public recognition of his successes had been of some practical value to him. But since leaving London and withdrawing into the solitude of the Sussex Downs, where he devoted himself to his studies and to the keeping of bees, he had come to detest notoriety, and on that subject he had given me the strictest instructions. However, when I reminded him that I had once approached him and received his promise that The Adventure of the Second Stain might be written when circumstances were favorable, and when I argued that no better story could be chosen to end this long series at its height than the most important international case in which he had ever been engaged, he finally consented, on the condition that I exercise the utmost care in withholding details which ought to remain secret. Any reader who notices certain vagueness in my narrative will not struggle to understand why. It was on a Tuesday morning in autumn, at some point in time whose exact year, or even decade, I cannot reveal, that our modest rooms in Baker Street received two visitors whose names were famous throughout Europe. The first, stern of gaze, sharp of nose, eagle-eyed, and stamped with authority in every line of his figure, was none other than Lord Bellinger, twice Prime Minister of Britain. The second was a dark, keen-featured, impeccably dressed gentleman of middle age, handsome and intelligent, the Right Honorable Trelawney Hope, Secretary for European Affairs, and widely regarded as one of the most promising men in the government. As they sat side by side upon our paper-littered sofa, the exhaustion and tension on their faces made it instantly clear that they had come to us upon a matter of grave urgency. The Prime Minister's thin hand, veins standing out beneath the skin, gripped the ivory handle of his umbrella as though it were an anchor. His gaunt, ascetic face carried sorrow in its hollow eyes as they moved from Holmes to myself. The minister, for his part, tugged anxiously at his mustache and could not stop toying with the chain of his watch. When I realized it was missing, this morning at 8 o'clock, I informed the Prime Minister at once, said Mr. Hope, and on his advice we came directly here. Have you informed the police? Asked Holmes. The Prime Minister answered in his famous brisk, decisive manner. No, sir, we have not, and indeed we cannot. To inform the police is to ensure that sooner or later the whole matter becomes public. That is precisely what we must prevent. For what reason, sir? Because the document in question is so important that, if the public were to learn of it, it might cause the gravest trouble across Europe. Indeed, it is almost certain to do so. It would not be exaggeration to say that it is a matter of war or peace. If we cannot recover it in absolute secrecy, then recovery becomes worthless, for the very purpose of those who have taken it is to publish its contents. Understand, I should be very glad if you would tell me how it disappeared, Mr. Trelawney Hope. I can explain in a few words, Mr. Holmes. The letter, because that is what it is, a letter from a foreign monarch, came into our hands 6 days ago. It was so significant that during this entire time, I never once left it in my safe at the office. Each evening, I carried it home with me to my house at Whitehall Terrace and placed it in a locked dispatch box in my bedroom. I'm certain it was there last night because while changing for dinner, I opened the box and saw it with my own eyes. This morning, when I looked again, it was gone. The dispatch box remained all night beside the mirror on my dressing table. Both my wife and I are light sleepers. We are quite certain that no one entered the room during the night. Yet, as I have told you, the letter had vanished. At what time did you dine? At 7:30. And how long after dinner did you go to bed? My wife went to the theater, so I waited up for her. It was past 11:30 when we retired. So for 4 hours your dispatch box was left unprotected in the room. The bedroom is entered in the mornings only by our maid. For the rest of the day, no one goes in except my own valet and my wife's maid. Both have been with us for years, trustworthy people. Besides, it would have been impossible for them to know that there was anything valuable among the ordinary papers in my box. Who knew that the letter existed? No one in the house knew. Your wife knew, surely? No, sir. Until it vanished this morning, I had not said a word of it to her. The Prime Minister nodded. I have long known how devoted you are to your duty, he said. I have not the slightest doubt that you would place a secret of state above every personal consideration. The minister bowed in acknowledgement. You are correct, sir. Until this morning, I had not spoken of it to my wife. Might she not have guessed? No, Mr. Holmes. Neither she nor anyone else could have guessed such a thing. Have you ever lost a document before? Never, sir. Who in England knew of this letter's existence? Yesterday, the entire cabinet was informed, but, as always, each member was sworn to secrecy, and the Prime Minister impressed upon them the extreme delicacy of the matter. My God, think of it. Only hours after that meeting, I lost it with my own hands. The minister's handsome face twisted with anguish, and he began to clutch at his hair. For an instant, the impulsive, fiery, deeply emotional man broke through the mask of aristocratic restraint. Then he mastered himself again. His voice regained its polished calm. Besides the cabinet, 2 or 3 clerks of the ministry may have known. But beyond that, Mr. Holmes, you may be assured that no one else in England knew of the letter. And abroad, I believe no one has seen it except the man who wrote it. I am convinced that even his own ministers are unaware of it. The letter did not come through the usual official channels. Holmes remained silent for a moment, thinking, I must ask, sir, what this document actually is, and why its disappearance is likely to lead to consequences so serious. The two statesmen glanced at one another. The Prime Minister's heavy eyebrows drew together. It was a long, thin envelope of pale blue. It was sealed with wax. The seal bore the figure of a seated lion. It was addressed in large bold writing. The recipient's name was. These details, however interesting, do not go to the heart of the matter, Holmes interrupted. What did the letter contain? I am afraid that is a state secret of the highest importance, Mr. Holmes. It is impossible for me to tell you, and I do not see that it is necessary. If, by those remarkable powers which everyone attributes to you, you succeed in finding that envelope and the letter within it, you will have rendered a great service to your country. Moreover, we are prepared to reward you with any honor within our power. Sherlock Holmes rose with a faint smile. You are the 2 busiest men in the kingdom, he said. I am, in my own way, a busy man myself. I am truly sorry that I cannot assist you in this matter. To continue this conversation would be a waste of time. The Prime Minister sprang to his feet, his deep-set eyes flashing with the fire that had so often terrified cabinets and Parliament alike. I'm not accustomed to being treated. He checked himself, forced his anger down, and sat again. For more than a minute, not a word was spoken. At last, the seasoned statesman shrugged. We must accept your terms, Mr. Holmes. You are right. It is unreasonable to ask you to solve this without giving you the information you require. You are correct, sir, said the young minister. Then, trusting in your honor, and in that of your colleague, Dr. Watson, I will speak. I have not the slightest doubt of your loyalty to your country. We are indeed confronted with the worst calamity that could befall a nation. You may rely upon us entirely, said Holmes. Very well. The letter was written by a monarch who has become dissatisfied with certain colonial developments in his own country. He wrote it hastily and entirely on his own responsibility. Our inquiries have satisfied us that his ministers know nothing of it. The language of the letter is most unfortunate, provocative, even. If it were to be made public, it would cause a storm of outrage. Within a week, we would find ourselves dragged into a great war. Holmes wrote a name upon a slip of paper and handed it to the Prime Minister. Exactly. That letter could cost billions of pounds and the lives of 100,000 men, and all for nothing. Such waste must not be allowed. Have you informed the writer? Yes, sir. A coded telegram has been sent. Perhaps he wishes it to come to light. No, sir. From what we understand, he himself realizes he acted rashly and without thought. Its publication would injure him and his nation far more than it would injure us. Then who benefits if the letter is exposed? Who would steal it in order to publish it? Now we enter the realm of international politics, Mr. Holmes. Consider the current condition of Europe, and you will see the motive at once. The continent is divided into armed camps. There are two great alliances, evenly matched in military strength. Great Britain holds a balance. If Britain were to go to war with one of her allies, then the opposing alliance, whether it enters the conflict or not, would gain the advantage. Do you follow me? Perfectly. In that case, the enemies of this monarch would seize the letter and publish it in order to destroy relations between our countries. Precisely, sir. And if the enemy has obtained this document, where might he send it? To any one of the great powers in Europe. It may at this moment already be traveling toward its destination aboard a steamship. Mr. Trelawney Hope bowed his head and groaned aloud. The Prime Minister laid a gentle hand upon his shoulder. This is a terrible misfortune, my dear friend. No one can blame you. You took every precaution. Well, Mr. Holmes, now that you know everything, what do you advise? Holmes shook his head sadly. Do you truly believe that war will follow if we cannot recover the letter? In all probability. Then begin preparations for war, sir. Surely that is too harsh, Mr. Holmes. Let us reason it out. The letter could not have been taken after 11:30 last night, because from that time until the moment the loss was discovered, Mr. Hope and his wife were in the room. Therefore, it must have been stolen sometime between 7:30 and 11:30. Indeed, it can scarcely have been long after 7:30, because the thief evidently knew exactly where the letter was and wished to obtain it as quickly as possible. If such an important document was stolen at that hour, where can it be now? Why would the thief keep it? He would deliver it immediately to the party concerned. Once it has left our hands in that way, it will be almost impossible even to trace it, let alone recover it. The Prime Minister rose. Your reasoning is sound, Mr. Holmes. I too fear there is little to be done. If we assume it was taken by the valet or the maid, both have served us faithfully for years. From what you say, the bedroom is on the second floor, so it could not be entered from outside, and any intruder from within the house would almost certainly have been noticed. Therefore, the letter must have been taken by someone in the house. And to whom would such a thief bring it? To one of the international agents whose names are familiar enough to me. There are 3 spies who stand at the very top of their profession. I shall begin by discovering whether any of them are still in London. If one is missing, particularly if he has not been seen since last night, I may have my first clue as to where the letter has gone. But why should he disappear? Asked the Minister for European Affairs. Surely he would take it to the embassy. I doubt it. Spies work independently. Their relations with embassies are often strained. The Prime Minister nodded his agreement. You are right, Mr. Holmes. Such a man would prefer to deliver so great a prize with his own hands. Your plan is an excellent one. In the meantime, Hope We cannot allow this disaster to prevent us from attending to our other responsibilities. If anything develops during the day, we shall communicate with you, and you will, of course, inform us of the results of your investigation." The two statesmen bowed to us and left the room with heavy steps. After our important visitors had gone, Holmes said nothing. He lit his pipe and sat for some time lost in thought. I, meanwhile, opened the morning paper and began reading an account of a sensational murder committed the night before. Suddenly Holmes sprang up with a shout and placed his pipe upon the mantelpiece. "Yes," he said, "that is the best way to approach the letter. We may be in a tight corner, but we are not without hope. Even now, if we can determine which man has taken it, we still have a chance. He may not yet have disposed of it. In the end, these fellows are motivated by money, and I have the British Treasury behind me. If the man wishes to sell it, I shall buy it. At worst, we raise income tax a few pennies. He may keep it for a little while before trying his luck with the other side, simply to see what offers come from this side first. Only 3 men would dare attempt so bold a game: Oberstein, La Rothiere, and Eduardo Lucas. I shall visit each of them in turn." I glanced down at the newspaper. "That Eduardo Lucas you mentioned, didn't he live in Godolphin Street?" "Yes. You won't be able to see him." "Why not?" "Because he was murdered in his house last night. Normally it was Holmes who surprised me, and so to catch him off guard for once gave me a satisfaction I can hardly describe." He stared at me with startled eyes, then snatched the newspaper from my hands and began to read. When my friend Holmes rose from his chair, I copied down the paragraph he had been studying. "Murder in Westminster. A most mysterious murder was committed last night at 16 Godolphin Street, one of those secluded 18th century houses which stand between Abbey and the River Thames. This distinguished residence, so close to Parliament that one might almost say it lies in the Tower's shadow, has for several years been occupied by Mr. Eduardo Lucas. Mr. Lucas had made a wide circle of acquaintances in society, both through his agreeable character and through his reputation as one of the finest amateur tenors in the country. He was a bachelor of 34 and lived with an elderly housekeeper, Mrs. Pringle, and his servant Mitten. Mrs. Pringle, as usual, retired early to her room upstairs. Mitten had gone to visit a friend in Hammersmith. From 10 o'clock onward, Mr. Lucas was alone in the house. What occurred within those walls during the subsequent hours is unknown, but at 11:45, Constable Barrett, passing along Godolphin Street, noticed that the door of number 16 was standing ajar. He knocked, but received no reply. Observing a light burning in the front room, he proceeded down the passage and knocked once more at the door. Again there was no answer. He then forced his way inside. Constable Barrett found the room in complete disorder. The furniture had been pushed to one side, and one chair lay overturned upon the floor. Beside it lay the unfortunate occupant of the house, still clutching one of the chair legs tightly in his hand. The man had been stabbed through the heart and is believed to have died within a very short time. The murder weapon was a curved Indian dagger from a collection of Oriental arms, which decorated one of the walls. The police do not believe robbery was the motive, as valuables in the room were untouched. Mr. Eduardo Lucas was well known and widely liked, and his death will cause sorrow among many. After a long silence, Holmes said, "What do you make of that, Watson?" "It's an astonishing coincidence." "Coincidence?" Holmes snapped. "When one of the 3 men most likely to play a leading role in this drama is brutally murdered at the very hour the drama is unfolding, the chance of coincidence is as close to 0 as anything in this world can be. No, Watson, this is not coincidence. These 2 events are connected. They must be, and our work is to discover how. But surely the police will learn everything now." "Not at all. They know only what they have seen in Godolphin Street. They know nothing of what happened in Whitehall Terrace, and they must not learn it. Only we know both halves of the story, and only we can join them. In truth, even without this murder, I already had reason to suspect Lucas. Godolphin Street in Westminster is only a few minutes' walk from Whitehall Terrace. The other agents I mentioned live at the far end of the West End. That alone makes it easier for Lucas than for any of them to maintain contact with the minister's house and receive messages from it. It may seem a minor detail, but when all events are compressed into a span of only a few hours, even the smallest advantage can become decisive. "Hello, what's this?" Mrs. Hudson had entered with a salver upon which lay a visiting card. Holmes glanced at it, frowned, and handed it to me. "Ask Lady Hilda Trelawney hope to step in, please," he said. That morning our modest rooms, already honored by visitors of the highest importance, were honored yet again by the arrival of the most beautiful woman in London. I had heard much of the legendary beauty of the youngest daughter of the Duke of Belminster, but no description and no black-and-white photograph could have prepared me for the delicate perfection of that living face before me. Yet on that autumn morning, beauty was not the first thing one noticed. Her cheeks, though lovely, were pale. Her eyes were bright, but with fear and agitation. Her sensitive lips trembled, held steady only through sheer effort. The moment she appeared in the doorway, what struck us was not her loveliness, but the terror written upon her features. "Has my husband been here, Mr. Holmes?" "Yes, madam, he has." "Mr. Holmes, I beg you, do not tell my husband that I have come here." Holmes bowed coldly and indicated a chair. "You place me in a difficult position, Lady Hilda. Please sit and tell me what you wish, but I cannot promise to comply with your request." She crossed the room and seated herself with her back to the window. Tall, elegant, exquisitely feminine, she carried herself like a queen. "Mr. Holmes," she began. As she spoke, her white-gloved hands clasped and unclasped restlessly. "I shall speak openly to you, and I hope you will be equally open with me. My husband and I tell each other everything, except one subject. That subject is politics. When politics is concerned, my husband's lips are sealed, and he will not tell me a single word. I know that something dreadful happened in our house last night. I know that a document has gone missing. But because it is political, my husband refuses to tell me anything. Yet I must learn precisely what has happened. You are the only person outside of politics who knows the truth. I implore you to tell me exactly what occurred and what the consequences may be. Please tell me everything, Mr. Holmes. Do not be silent out of loyalty to your client, because whether he realizes it or not, it is in his own interest that I should know. What was that stolen document? You ask of me something I cannot do, madam." She gave a low cry and buried her face in her hands. "You must understand," Holmes continued. "If your husband has chosen not to tell you, how can I, who learn the facts only under professional confidence, reveal what he himself conceals? You must ask your husband what the document was. I have asked him. That is why I have come to you as my last hope. But if you can enlighten me on just one point, you will have done me a great kindness even without speaking of details." "And what is that point, madam? Could my husband's political career suffer because of this? If the matter is not set right, it is very likely to have serious consequences." "Oh!" She drew a deep breath, as though a dreadful doubt had at last been confirmed. "One more question, Mr. Holmes. In the first shock of this disaster, my husband let slip that the loss of this document might have terrible consequences for the entire nation. Is that true? If your husband said such a thing, how can I contradict him? And what sort of consequences did he mean?" "No, madam. Once again you ask what I cannot answer. Then I shall not take more of your time. I cannot blame you for your reserve. and I'm sure you will not misunderstand my anxiety, even if I have acted against my husband's wishes. I ask you again, please do not mention this visit to him." As she left, she turned once more to look at us, and I saw the same unease return to that beautiful face. Her mouth tightened with fear, and terror once again settled in her eyes. Then she was gone. When the soft rustle of her skirts had faded away, Holmes smiled. "Well, Watson," he said, "women are your department. Tell me, what game was that charming lady playing? What was her true purpose?" She stated her purpose plainly enough, and her concern was natural. Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Think of her appearance, Watson, her manner, her suppressed excitement, her restlessness, her insistence. And remember, women of her class do not express their feelings so freely." She was clearly deeply shaken. It is curious, too, that she declared it would be for her husband's benefit if she knew everything. What did she mean by that? You noticed, of course, how she maneuvered to put the light behind her. She did not wish us to see her expression. Yes, she chose that chair, though there were plenty of others. "Women are impossible to read," Holmes murmured. "Do you remember the woman in Margate, whom I suspected for the same reason? She hadn't powdered her nose, and I was right. How can you build conclusions upon ground so uncertain? The smallest gesture may carry volumes of meaning. Yet sometimes the strangest behavior is explained by nothing more than a hairpin or a curling iron. Anyway, good day to you, Watson. You're going out?" "Yes. I intend to amuse myself a little with our official friends in Godolphin Street. I am convinced the key to this case lies with Eduardo Lucas, but I have not the faintest idea what we're going to find. There is no greater mistake than to form a theory before one has the facts. I shall leave you here on guard, Watson. If any new visitors arrive, you'll attend to them. If possible, we shall have lunch together." That day and the next, Holmes assumed the mood his friends called silent and his enemies called sullen. He came and went at odd hours, smoked incessantly, played scraps of music on the violin, stared into space for long stretches, ate sandwiches at absurd times, and scarcely answered even the most ordinary questions I put to him. It was plain that neither his investigation nor the police inquiry was going well. Since Holmes would tell me nothing of his progress, I followed the details through the newspapers. It was from the press that I learned that the murdered man's servant, John Mitten, had been arrested and shortly afterwards released. The prosecution believed the case to be one of deliberate murder, yet no murderer had been identified. No motive could be established. The room was full of valuables, but nothing had been taken. The victim's papers had not been disturbed. A careful examination of his correspondence suggested that Lucas had taken a deep interest in international politics. He appeared to be an incurable gossip, a gifted linguist, and a tireless collector of letters. He maintained friendly relations with prominent political figures from several countries. But among the mass of documents found in his drawers, nothing sensational emerged. His relations with women seemed liberal but superficial. Though he knew many women, he had only a few close friends, and no evidence suggested that he was involved in any love affair. He lived regularly and quietly, and appeared to have no quarrels with anyone. His death remained a profound mystery, and was likely to remain so. The arrest of John Mitten seemed an act of desperation. The police preferred to do something rather than nothing. There was no real evidence against him. He had indeed gone that night to visit friends in Hammersmith, and their testimony confirmed it. Since he left them early, he had time to reach Westminster before the hour of the murder, but he claimed to have walked part of the way, and given the fine weather that night, such a thing seemed entirely possible. He returned home around midnight and was shocked by the unexpected tragedy. He had always been on good terms with his employer. Several of Lucas's belongings were found in the servants' room, most notably a small shaving case. Mitten claimed that these items had been given to him by Lucas's gifts, and the housekeeper confirmed this. Mitten had been in Lucas's service for 3 years, but one detail was notable. Lucas never took Mitten with him on any of his trips abroad. When Lucas traveled to Paris, sometimes for as long as 3 months, Mitten remained behind to watch the house in Godolphin Street. The housekeeper had heard nothing on the night of the murder. If a visitor had come, then the gentleman must have admitted them himself. As far as I could follow the case through the newspapers, the mystery remained unsolved for 3 days. If Holmes knew anything, he kept it entirely to himself. True, he had told me that Inspector Lestrade was supplying him with information about the investigation. So, I knew he was following every development closely, but of the details I remained completely ignorant. On the 4th day, however, a long telegram from Paris seemed to settle the matter once and for all. The Daily Telegraph reported the following. A discovery by the Paris police has lifted the veil from the fate of Mr. Eduardo Lucas, who was brutally murdered last Monday night in his home at Westminster, Godolphin Street. Our readers will recall that the gentleman was found stabbed to death in his residence, and that the servant arrested on suspicion was subsequently cleared of all wrongdoing. Yesterday, the servants of a woman named Madame Henri Fournay, who lives in a small villa on Rue Austerlitz, informed the authorities that their mistress had lost her mind. Upon examination, it was confirmed that she is indeed suffering from a dangerous and permanent madness. The police investigation has established that Madame Henri Fournay returned from a trip to London last Tuesday, and that she appears to have a connection to the Westminster murder. Through comparison of photographs, it has been confirmed that Monsieur Henri Fournay and Eduardo Lucas were one and the same person, and that the deceased had been living a double life in Paris and London. Madame Fournay, of Creole origin, is known to possess a highly violent temperament and is believed to have suffered jealous fits in the past bordering on insanity. It is suspected that the savage murder, which has caused such sensation in London, was committed during one of these attacks. Though her exact movements on Monday night cannot be fully traced, a woman answering her description attracted considerable attention at Charing Cross Station on Tuesday morning, owing to her strange appearance and unusual behavior. It is believed either that she committed the murder in a state of madness, or that the shock of committing the murder drove her into madness immediately afterwards. Madame Fournay is currently unable to give a coherent account of her actions, and the doctors have little hope of her recovery. Several witnesses have also stated that a woman resembling Madame Fournay was seen watching the house in Godolphin Street on Monday night. After reading the report aloud while my friend ate his breakfast, I asked, "What do you think of it, Holmes?" He rose from the table and began pacing the room. "My dear Watson," he said, "you are a patient and long-suffering friend. But if I have told you nothing these past 3 days, it is because there was nothing to tell. And this news from Paris means very little to us. But it explains the man's death beyond all doubt. The man's death is of the smallest importance when set beside what we are truly hunting," he replied sharply. "Our object is to recover the letter and save Europe from catastrophe. In these last 3 days, only one thing has mattered, and that is that nothing has happened. I have been receiving reports from the government nearly every hour, and it seems there has been no disturbance anywhere in Europe. If that letter has reached its destination, no, it cannot have. If it has not, then where is it now? In whose hands? Why is it not being put into circulation? That is the question hammering in my brain. Can it really be a coincidence that Lucas was killed on the very night the letter disappeared? Did the letter reach him? If it did, why was it not found among his papers? Did his mad wife take it with her? And if she did, is it now in her house in Paris? How am I to search for it without drawing the attention of the French police? We are in a situation, Watson, where the law itself is almost as dangerous to us as the criminals. In spite of the enormity of the matter, everyone is against us. If I succeed in this case, I have no doubt it will crown my career with a victory unlike any other. Hello, here are the latest dispatches from the front. He snatched up the note that had just been brought to him and read it rapidly. Lestrade has found something interesting. Get your hat, Watson. We'll take a walk down to Westminster. It was the first time I had seen the scene of the murder. The house was tall, narrow, and faded with age. One of those buildings that seemed determined to embody the severity and solidity of the century that had produced it. It looked formal, almost forbidding. Lestrade met us at the front window, his bulldog features pressed against the glass. The stout inspector opened the door himself and greeted us with a warmth which, coming from him, was almost affectionate. We entered the room in which the murder had been committed. Yet no trace of the crime remained, save for an ugly, shapeless stain upon the rug in the center of the floor. The rug was small, square, and made of felt, lying upon an expensive, old-fashioned polished parquet. Above the fireplace hung a magnificent collection of weapons, one of which had served as the instrument of death. In front of the window stood a lavish writing desk. Every detail in the house, the paintings, the carpets, the wall coverings, suggested a taste for luxury, so refined it bordered on the feminine. "Did you read the news from Paris?" Lestrade asked. Holmes nodded. "Our French friends have hit the bullseye this time. There's no doubt things happened exactly as they say." The woman knocked at the door. Lucas was surprised, because up until then he had managed to live 2 separate lives without a flaw. He let his wife in. He couldn't exactly leave her on the street. She told him how she tracked him down, hurled accusations at him, and things escalated until that dagger on the wall settled the matter. The fact that the chairs were all dragged aside shows it wasn't over in a moment, and the chair in his hand proves he tried to defend himself. We know what happened now as clearly as if we'd watched it ourselves. Holmes frowned. "And yet you sent for me?" "Yes, but for something else. Something trivial, really, but it might interest you. Something strange, perhaps even mad. It has nothing to do with the important parts of the case. It can't. Everything is already perfectly clear." "What is it, then?" "You know that in cases like this, we're careful not to disturb anything in the room. Nothing was moved here. The place was guarded day and night. This morning, after the man had been buried and the inquiry finished, we decided we might as well start clearing up the room. As you can see, the rug isn't fixed down. It just laid there. When we lifted it, we found..." "What?" Holmes's face tightened with sudden anxiety. "Something you'd never guess in 1,000 years. You see that stain on a rug, don't you? A good deal of it should have soaked through, shouldn't it?" "Certainly." "Well then, you'll be surprised to hear that beneath that stain the white wooden floor was perfectly clean. No stain? But there must be. That's what you'd think, but there's no stain at all." He lifted the corner of the rug, and indeed it was exactly as he had said. But the underside of the rug is as stained as the top. It must have left a mark. Lestrade chuckled, pleased with himself at having startled the famous expert. "Now, I'll show you the explanation. There is a second stain, but it doesn't match the first. Look and see for yourself." As he spoke, he lifted the rug from the opposite corner, and there upon the pale surface of the old wooden floor we saw a large patch of dried red. "What do you make of that, Mr. Holmes?" Lestrade demanded. "There is nothing to make of it," Holmes said sharply. "The 2 stains were once aligned, but the rug has been turned. Since it is square and not nailed down, that would be very easy to do. We didn't need the official consulting detective to tell us the rug was turned, Mr. Holmes. When we rotate it, the stains line up perfectly. We already know that. But the real question is, who turned the rug and why? From the hard set of Holmes's face, I could tell that beneath his calm exterior, he was trembling with excitement. "Tell me, Lestrade," he said, "was it the same officer who kept watch in the corridor the whole time?" "Yes." "Take my advice and interrogate him hard, Lestrade," said Holmes. "But don't do it in front of us. Take him into the back room while we wait here. It's easier for a man to confess when he's alone. Ask him how he dared admit anyone and leave them alone in the room. Don't ask, 'Did you do it?' Ask, 'Why did you do it?' Tell him you know someone entered the room. Press him, corner him, and tell him you'll forgive him if he confesses everything. Do exactly as I say. I know how to make him talk," Lestrade shouted, and without even looking back, he stormed out into the corridor. A moment later, we could hear his voice from the back room, loud with threats. "Now, Watson, now!" Holmes cried almost wildly. All the fierce, demonic ambition that lay imprisoned beneath his usual cold restraint burst loose in an instant. He tore the rug up from the floor as if he meant to rip it apart, flung it aside, and dropped to his knees upon the boards. Crawling like a man possessed, he ran his fingers along the edges of every parquet panel, like a hunting eagle probing for a weakness where it could drive in its claws. At last, one of the boards lifted beneath his touch, rising like the lid of a box. Beneath it was a small hollow space. Holmes plunged his hand into the darkness and immediately let out a low growl of rage and disappointment. It was empty. "Quick, Watson, quick! Put it back as it was." We had barely replaced the board and smoothed the rug into position when we heard Lestrade's voice again in the corridor. When the inspector entered, Holmes was leaning against the mantelpiece, wearing the weary expression of a man who has been kept waiting, struggling not to yawn. "Sorry to have kept you, Mr. Holmes. I expect you were about to die of boredom." "Yes, he confessed everything." "Commine, Macpherson, tell these gentlemen about the unforgivable blunder you committed." A big policeman, crimson with shame, entered with hesitant steps. His remorse was written in every line of his face. "I meant no harm at all, sir," he stammered. "Last night a young woman came to the door. She got the address wrong. We chatted a bit. A man gets lonely standing guard all day. And then what?" Lestrade demanded. "She said she wanted to see the room where the murder happened, said she'd read about it in the papers. She was properly dressed, spoke well, looked like a respectable lady, so I didn't see any harm in letting her take a quick look. But when she saw the stain on the rug, she fainted dead away. I ran to the back to fetch water, but she was lying there like she'd died, wouldn't come round at all. So I went to the ivy plant on the corner to get some brandy. But when I came back, she was gone. I thought she must have come to herself while I was out and slipped away out of embarrassment, not wanting to face me. And the rug being moved? You're right, sir. When I returned, the rug was a bit disturbed. And as you can see, the floor underneath is polished, so when she fell, the rug must have slid. I straightened it out again. Let that be a lesson to you, Constable Macpherson, Lestrade said sternly. You can't fool me. I'm sure you thought I wouldn't notice you'd abused your duty, but the moment I saw the rug, I knew someone had been in the room. You're lucky nothing was stolen. Otherwise, you'd be finding yourself in Queer Street. I apologize for dragging you all the way here over such a minor matter, Mr. Holmes, but I thought you might find the two stains not matching to be of interest. It certainly was interesting, Holmes replied. That woman you mentioned, did she come only once? Yes, sir, only once. What was her name? I don't know, sir. Said she'd come about a typing job, but mixed up the address. She was a very pleasant, polite woman, sir. Was she tall? Attractive? Yes, sir. Not exactly young, but not old either. You'd call her pretty, maybe even very pretty. Please, officer, just let me look, she said. Very sweet-talking lady. I didn't see the harm, in letting her lean in and glance around. How was she dressed? Plain, sir. She wore a long coat that reached right down her heels. What time was it? It was just getting dark. When I came back with the brandy, the street lamps were only just being lit. I see, said Holmes. Come along, Watson. I believe we have something far more important to do elsewhere. As we left the room, Lestrade remained behind, and the repentant constable followed us to the front door to let us out. On the stairs, Holmes suddenly turned and picked something up from the floor. The policeman stared. My God, he cried, his face contorted with astonishment. Holmes pressed a finger to his lips and slipped the object into his breast pocket. Once we had turned the corner, he broke into laughter. Perfect, he exclaimed. Come along, my dear fellow. The final act of the play is about to begin. I imagine it will relieve you to know that there will be no war, that Mr. Trelawney Hope's career will not be stained, that the rashness of that rash monarch will go unpunished, that the Prime Minister will not be forced to wrestle with European catastrophe, and that through a little tact and judgment on our part, this tremendous crisis will pass without a single hair being harmed. Once again, I found myself filled with admiration for this extraordinary man. So you solved it, I shouted. More or less, Watson. There's still a few dark corners. But we've come too far now. If we cannot finish the remainder, we ought to be ashamed of ourselves. We shall go at once to Whitehall Terrace and bring the matter to its conclusion. When we arrived at the house of the Secretary for European Affairs, Holmes asked for Lady Hilda Trelawney Hope. We were shown into her sitting room. Mr. Holmes, she began at once. Her cheeks were flushed pink with anger. This is not the conduct of a gentleman. I asked you to keep my visit to you secret so that my husband would not think I interfered in his affairs. Yet you come here now and expose the fact that there is some connection between us. I regret it, madam, but I had no choice. I have a duty to recover a document of the highest importance. Therefore, I must ask you to give it to me. Lady Hilda sprang to her feet. The color drained from her beautiful face until it was white as paper. Her eyes began to blaze. She swayed, barely able to stand. For a moment, I thought she would faint. Then, with a great effort, she mastered herself. Now there was nothing in her expression but immense astonishment and burning indignation. You are insulting me, Mr. Holmes. Don't, madam. It is useless. Give me the letter. She reached for the bell cord. The servant will show you out. Do not ring that bell, Lady Hilda. If you do, all the goodwill and effort I have spent to prevent a scandal will be wasted. Give me the letter, and this can still be settled. If you cooperate, I can arrange everything. If you refuse, I shall be forced to denounce you and expose the whole affair. She stood proud and defiant, watching Holmes with fearless eyes, as though trying to read his thoughts. Her hand remained on the bell, but she could not bring herself to pull it. You try to frighten me. It is not manly. You come here and attempt to intimidate a woman. You said you knew something. What is it that you know? Please sit down, madam. You may injure yourself if you fall. I shall not speak until you are seated. Thank you. I give you 5 minutes, Mr. Holmes. 1 minute will do. Lady Hilda, I know that you went to Eduardo Lucas, that you gave him the document, and that last night you returned to the house by a clever plan. I even know how you recovered the letter from the hidden compartment beneath the rug. She stared at him, her face like chalk. Twice she swallowed before she could speak. You are mad, Mr. Holmes, mad, she cried at last. Holmes drew from his pocket a small piece of cardboard. It was the cut-out portrait of a woman's face. I keep it with me because it may prove useful, he said calmly. The constable recognized the person in the picture. Lady Hilda's breath caught. Her head fell back. Don't do this, Lady Hilda. The letter is with you. It is still possible to set everything right. My object is not to harm you. Once I return the missing letter to your husband, my duty is complete. Listen to me and be honest with me. You have no other choice." It was impossible not to admire her courage. Even now, she resisted surrender. "I tell you again, Mr. Holmes, this is nonsense." Holmes rose. "I am sorry for you, Lady Hilda. I have done everything I can, but I see it has been wasted." He pulled the bell. A servant entered. "Is Mr. Trelawney Hope at home?" "He will return at 1:15, sir." Holmes glanced at his watch. 15 minutes, he said. "Very well, I shall wait." The servant had barely closed the door when Lady Hilda dropped to her knees and threw herself at Holmes's feet. Her arms were outstretched, her beautiful face wet with tears as she looked up at him and begged for mercy. "Forgive me, Mr. Holmes. Forgive me," she cried wildly. "For God's sake, do not tell my husband. I love him. I would not have the smallest stain upon his name. If he learns the truth, his noble heart will be broken." Holmes bent and lifted her gently to her feet. "I'm glad you have seen reason at last, madam. We must not lose a second. Where is the letter?" She ran to the writing desk, unlocked a drawer, and produced the long blue envelope. "Here it is, Mr. Holmes. Oh God, if only I had never laid eyes upon it. How can we return it?" Holmes muttered, "Quick, quick, we must think. Where's the dispatch box?" "Still in the bedroom." "Then we are fortunate indeed. Quickly, madam, bring it here." Moments later, she returned carrying a broad red box. "How did you open it before? You have a duplicate key?" "Of course you do. Open it." Lady Hilda drew a small key from her bodice and unlocked the box. It was filled to the brim with papers. Holmes slipped the blue envelope between the pages of another document in the middle. Then the box was shut and locked again and returned to the bedroom. "Now we are ready," said Holmes. "We still have 10 minutes. I shall do everything I can to protect you, Lady Hilda. In return, you will tell me what this remarkable chain of events truly means." "I will tell you everything, Mr. Holmes," she cried. "Oh, Mr. Holmes, I would sooner cut off my right hand than see my husband unhappy. In all of London, you would not find a woman who loves her husband as I do. But if my husband learns what I have done, what I was forced to do, he will never forgive me. He is so proud of his honor that he cannot pardon such a fault. Help me, Mr. Holmes. Our family happiness is at stake. Hurry, madam. Time is short. Before I was married, I wrote a foolish letter, Mr. Holmes, written recklessly by a passionate girl in love. I meant no harm, but my husband would never forgive it. If that letter ever reached his hands, his trust in me would be destroyed forever. Years passed, and I believed the matter buried for good. Then this man Lucas approached me, claiming he had the letter, and he threatened to send it to my husband. I begged him. He said that if I gave him the document he had heard was in my husband's dispatch box, he would return my letter to me. Through an agent in the ministry, he had learned of its existence. But he assured me my husband would suffer no harm. Put yourself in my place, Mr. Holmes. What could I do? You could have told your husband everything. I could not, Mr. Holmes. I could not. If I refused Lucas, I would have been ruined. Terrible as it was to steal my husband's papers, I did not fully understand what political consequences might follow. But I understood perfectly what would happen to me in matters of love and trust. I did it, Mr. Holmes. I took an impression of my husband's key, and Lucas had a copy made. I opened the dispatch box, took the letter, and carried it to Godolphin Street. And what happened there? Holmes asked. As arranged, I knocked at the door. Lucas opened it. I followed him into the sitting room, but as I entered, I left the front door slightly ajar, for I was afraid to be alone with him. I remember seeing a woman outside as I entered. It did not take long. My letter was lying on his desk. I gave him the document I had brought, and he handed me back my own letter. At that moment, we heard a sound at the door. Footsteps were coming down the corridor. Lucas hurriedly lifted the rug, placed the document somewhere beneath it and covered it again. What followed was like a nightmare. All I remember is the furious voice of a dark-haired woman shouting in French. So my waiting was not in vain. At last I've caught you with her. They fought violently. I saw Lucas seize a chair to defend himself. In the woman's hand something flashed, a knife. I fled from that dreadful scene. I learned only the next morning from the newspapers what had happened. That night I had been happy because I had recovered my letter, but I had no idea what was coming. By morning I realized that I had escaped one danger only to fall into another. My husband's agony when he discovered the document missing tore my heart. I could barely stop myself from falling at his feet and confessing everything. But to do so would have meant confessing my past as well. So I came to you, try to learn how serious the situation truly was. Once I understood the danger, my only thought was to recover the document. It must still be where Lucas had placed it, for he hid it before that dreadful woman entered the room. In truth, if she had not come at that moment, I would never have known where he put it. But how could I enter that house? For 2 days I watched it, but the door was always shut. Last night, I made one final attempt. You already know what I did, and how I succeeded. When I brought the letter home, I did not know how to return it to my husband without confessing my guilt, and I even thought of destroying it. My God, I hear footsteps on the stairs. The Secretary for European Affairs burst into the room, breathless with excitement. "Any news, Mr. Holmes? Any news?" he cried. "I'm hopeful. Thank God." Color returned to the minister's face. "The Prime Minister is dining with me today. May he share your hope. His nerves are steel, but I know he has hardly slept since this began. Jacobs, ask the Prime Minister to come upstairs, will you? And you, my dear. This is political business, I'm afraid. We shall come down to luncheon shortly." The Prime Minister's manner was calm, but from the brightness of his eyes and the tremble in his bony hands, I could see that he too shared the younger man's agitation. "As I understand it, Mr. Holmes, you have something to tell us?" "So far, nothing has occurred," Holmes replied. "I have searched every place where the letter might reasonably be, and I believe there is no cause for alarm." "That is not enough, Mr. Holmes. We cannot live forever on the edge of an erupting volcano. We require something tangible. That is precisely why I am here. The more I weigh the matter in my mind, the more convinced I become that the letter never left this house." "Nonsense, Mr. Holmes. If it had, it would certainly have been published by now. But if the person who took it never intended to remove it from the house, why take it at all? I do not believe the letter was taken by anyone. Then how did it leave the dispatch box? I do not believe it ever left the dispatch box. This is no time for jokes, Mr. Holmes. I am certain it was not in the box. Have you examined the box since Tuesday morning?" "No, there was no need. It may have escaped your notice." "That is impossible, yet I remain of that opinion. I have seen such things before. I believe there were other papers in the box. The letter may have slipped among them. It was on top. If someone shook the box, the papers may have shifted. No, I emptied the box completely." "It is easily settled," said the Prime Minister. "Let us have the dispatch box brought in." The minister rang the bell. "Bring my dispatch box, Jacobs." "This is nonsense, but if you insist, we may as well end it." "Thank you, Jacobs, set it there. I always carry the key on my watch chain. Here are the papers. Lord Marrow's letter, Sir Charles Hardy's report, the note from Belgrade, the memorandum on the Russo-German grain tariffs, the Madrid letter, Lord Flowers's memorandum. Good God, what is this? Lord Bellinger. Lord Bellinger." The Prime Minister snatched the blue envelope from the minister's hand. "Yes, this is it. The letter is here, exactly as it should be. Congratulations, Hope." Thank you. You cannot imagine my relief. It is as though tons of weight have been lifted from my shoulders. But this is impossible. You are a magician, Mr. Holmes. You possess powers beyond human. How did you know the letter was in the box? Because I knew it was nowhere else. I can't believe my eyes. He ran to the door like a madman. Where's my wife? I must tell her the good news. Hilda. Hilda. His voice faded down the staircase. The Prime Minister's eyes glittered as he turned to Holmes. Come now, sir, he said. This is not as simple as it appears. How did the letter return to that box? Holmes smiled, turning away as though to escape the probing stare of those remarkable eyes. We have our own diplomatic secrets, he said, and took up his hat and moved toward the door.